Women share the most amazing thoughts on national issues, and they do it passionately.
For most men that are educated, that are exposed, we've seen nothing to it.
The population and the level of poverty made me cry. No infrastructural development whatsoever. And you tell me Lagos is working?
That was an accident, and it was a one-off thing. Other than that, there has never been any situation in Nigeria where a Nigerian attacked anybody just because of where they came from.
Sharing the adorable word of women in politics every week, only on Core TV News.
BUHARI'S administration has hardly marked its first week in office, yet some load of criticism seem to be poured out already as regards his style, his gesture, and some body movement of his administration at this time. On the show this morning, we're considering BUHARI'S campaign promises and the endless expectations of Nigeria. What we have tagged also the criticisms and the reactions coming from Nigeria. I'm joined by a legal practitioner, Barrister Tomi Olagojo, joins us today on Call Digest. Good morning, sir. Thank you for finding time to come.
Thank you very much, Mr. How are you?
I'm terrific. And let's start with the very inauguration speech of Mr. President. Some were of the opinion that the body language, unlike what was expected, was a new president that was going to probe certain corrupt practices, but it was clear on that he wasn't coming to witch hunt anyone. On the other side, some are saying if you don't make examples, if you don't make scapegoats, probably there was no way out of corruption. What are your thoughts along that line?
Well, I think the first thing to say is that witch hunt and probe are not the same thing. So the fact that he said he was not going to witch hunt anybody does not mean that he's not going to probe, if necessary, or investigate allegations of corrupt practices. My view of the speech of the president was that, to me, it represents a sort of an anticlimax. Although I am comforted by the intuition that, well, he may just be a man of very little words and more of action. And two, you must also understand that he may be playing the bourgeois politics of pacification. You know, there's a lot of, there has been a lot of stories around Buhari about his, the fact that he's despotic, he's authoritarian, and so he may just be doing that to pacify the international community as somebody who will not violently rock the boat. Weighing both sides, I think that speech really may not represent what the outlook of that government will be.
I think the most popular quote in that speech would be, "I am for nobody, yet I am for everyone." You know, at this time, are also considering the kind of allegiance that he's expected to have, especially politically. Prior to his inauguration, his stance was clear that he wasn't going to tamper with the leadership, of the Senate, as he has relinquished that power and authority to his party. But how realistic is the allegiance of a president given the kind of political structure that brought him to power?
Well, I think the president is trying to vacillate between two positions, being the people's man and also being a politician. With time, I think he will grapple with those contradictions and he will come to terms. There's no way the president will not play politics. I'm not interested in who becomes the leader of the National Assembly. All those things, to me, are honestly puritanistic. Ultimately, the president will have to play politics. He will have to work with the National Assembly, and he will have to choose people who he will prefer to work with. He will have to try and influence things decently this time. He doesn't have to turn himself to a bull in the china shop like we've had in the past. But that does not mean that he will totally surrender what should be the presidential influence on all spheres of the polity to chance. I do not think that is what will happen.
Well, the office of the First Lady spiced up the outgoing administration a little, given the character that occupied it. And I'm not sure whether we got that on tape, but it looks as if the body language of the APC was that office was going to be scrapped. But then the official portrait of the First Lady was released a few days after the inauguration, and that also indeed raised some dust. What are your thoughts, given there was this opinion that that office is not constitutional? Can you tell us more about the legality of this office?
Well, I think to start with, it is beyond argument that there's no such thing as the office of the First Lady. That has been decided by our courts, and the use of public funds for that office is illegal. Before we now come to whether or not there was an official portrait of the First Lady, I think we should start with this. In my view, there has been like 4 groups of people commenting on the Buhari administration. The first, in my view, are those who have this very high expectation of this new government, informed probably by the seeming ineptitude, or if you call it the laissez-faire of the previous administration, and because of that, who shifted their allegiance and love to President Muhammadu Buhari. The other group will be people who are genuinely concerned, maybe not with the high expectations of, the first group that I spoke about, who also are genuinely concerned, who are not really convinced that what we have is change in essence, but perhaps what we have is change in personalities at the helm of government. The third people are people who are eager to show us that we made a mistake by voting the general. The fourth set perhaps are people who are emotionally satisfied that we have changed the previous government, and anything the new government does is fine with them. So if you have this background to viewing comments about the government, you'll be able to see where everybody is coming from. As far as I am concerned, there are some genuine criticisms of the actions already taken by the new government, and there are some mischievous ones. Some people just want to show us that, look, we have just made a mistake. But I think that it's not tactical for them to start now, because there's really nothing to pin the government to in real terms. For instance, you say there's an official portrait of the First Lady. I have not seen anybody say that officially from government. We have seen it all over social media. The fact that the First Lady takes a photograph does not make it an official portrait. Even under President Goodluck Jonathan, there was no official portrait of the First Lady. Did you see any official portrait of the First Lady? Even when the First Lady went all out behaving like a government official and doing all sorts, you didn't get to public buildings to find the photograph of the First Lady. So as far as I'm concerned, I believe that, yes, the office of the First Lady, in quote now, is an illegal office. It has no place in our laws. Public funds should not be applied to financing that office. Anything done in that light will be legal. It will be, in fact, because we criticized the outgone First Lady, if we will put it that way, for constituting herself into a principality, as it were. So I really do not think that...
Well, the question that really comes to mind now is, what role that the spouse of Mr. President or Mr. Governor, as the case is, what constitutional role is available for such individuals to play in government?
Let me just make it very simple. There is no constitutional role for the spouse of a government. What if a man who is not married gets to government? What happens? There is no law that compels anybody to marry. It's not one of the criteria for occupying public posts that you must be married. Let's just flip it a little. If a woman becomes the president, are you going to have the first guy, or what do you call it? What would you call a husband? To me, you can play the role of supporting your husband. Most of the time, because of our family virtues around here, and because globally family virtues are promoted, we give them some respect. They stand with their husbands during swearing ceremonies and things like that. All these things are promoting our sentiments towards strong families. But as far as I am concerned, there is no role legally for the spouses of leaders, governors, presidents. And to circumvent this, that is what we find most times. To circumvent this, you see, this case about whether or not there's a constitutional role for first ladies was taken up by Chief Gani Fawemi against Mayan Babangida, the Better Life for Rural Women program. And the court ruled that the Better Life for Rural Women program was not a government program, and therefore government funds cannot be applied towards it. Now, to circumvent that decision of law, what First Lady started doing, particularly it started under Mrs. Stella Obasanjo, was to fund NGOs. And now when they start these NGOs, they surreptitiously fund it with government funds. So as far as I'm concerned, the best thing for a government to do, if a government really wants to stick to sound principles, is to advise the wives of public officials to please take care of government. I think it's better that way.
But in your opinion, where do they cross the line? Because, of course, they also have the constitutional right to, preside over an NGO or do charity, run charity organizations. I mean, the fact that someone is married to Buhari now doesn't mean that her whole life shuts down and then she can't continue with her own prospects and the rest. But where do you see them cross that constitutional line as the wife of an elected principal?
Good. It depends on how discerning a person is. Yes, I agree with you totally. Lives of spouses of elected officials of government does not come to an end because your husband has become president or a governor or whatever. However, immediately you start applying resources of the state towards what is supposed to, because what you had said is that your private life doesn't come to an end. We agree. But immediately you start applying funds and resources of government towards promoting your private affair, then you have crossed the line. You have crossed the line. So as far as I am concerned, the safest way for a government that comes in on the crest of disaffection for a previous government, a government that comes in as a mark of the people's protest against an incumbent, should avoid such pitfalls. If I were Buhari, it would not be illegal for his wife to have an NGO. But if I were him, I would advise my wife to calm down. And the reason why we have all these NGOs all over the place is a signpost of the inefficiency of government. If government were doing well, why do you need an advocacy for rural women? Government should address the problem of rural women. If we were doing well about maternal health, child support, there will not be a need for family support program. If the polity was well managed, there will not be any need for first ladies to be talking about peace and all sorts. So to me, the basic functions of government, if they are properly attended to, all these issues that are caused by the ruling class will not become an instrument for the ruling class to shortchange the people through frivolous NGOs of their various wives.
But have you considered whether we have a quality of electorate that understands that? Because the moment we elect you into office, we also are quite expectant, and the level of our expectation oftentimes, motivate these NGOs. Because as a wife of a president, for instance, your clan or your ethnic affiliation require certain things of you, and they bring it to your table, and in response you obviously will come out with some creative stuffs. So how do we balance these two realities?
Well, Nigeria operates a presidential system of government. The implication is that, as it is, the president does not have one group as his constituency. The constituency of the president is Nigeria. So if you run government properly for the benefit of all, then you will not need side distractions such as the NGOs funded by your wife and things like that. But once you start digressing and all sort of irrelevancies cross your path, that is when you want to satisfy. When you see government trying to satisfy a specific section, that government is losing it. I can tell you for free.
Okay. So, okay. I'm sorry for cutting you, but in your opening remarks, I understand that you segmented, the people into about three categories. Four categories, and that also informed the quality of expectation that they have of the government. Yes. But you agree with me that one major issue for the incoming government was a way of cutting government spending and government cost. The 2015 budget, for instance, had less than 40% for capital expenditure. We seem to even have gone to the level of borrowing to pay salaries. Now, the very first appointment that the incumbent president made was the office of the special assistant and, of course, a senior special assistant as regards publicity and media role. But many are beginning to kick that we expected that time already expired. Well, we have a senior, and then you know it goes on and on like that. For the outgoing administration, you recall that about 3 or 4 offices ran the media and publicity department of the presidency. How do you perceive this?
I think that was, in my view, wrong. I do not think that the president needs that elaborate communication team, although I think the government needs to communicate very effectively with the people. But I really do not think you need such arrowheads to manage that kind of outfit. I think it is a wrong signal, explainable as it looks, and we have seen explanations from the pundits associated with this government. But I think that was a very wrong move. I think the president should just have restricted himself to a presidential spokesman, particularly because we are now going to have a minister of information ultimately. We are going to have a minister of information who will be speaking on behalf of the government. So why does the president need 2 people to speak for him at the same time? 2 senior media personalities in Nigeria have been employed by government. I think it was not a tactical move. I think that was wrong.
Well, there are also the names of 15 advisors that have been forwarded to the Senate. I understand the same list has also been forwarded to the House of Representatives. 15 sounds like lower than numbers we used to have, isn't it?
Yes, it looks like it's lower, but until we see what they are going to be doing, it will be premature to comment on that. But let's see first whether, for example, we've had senior special assistant on domestic affairs before. I really do not know what that is supposed to mean. We've had, things like that. So I really think until the president comes out with a list of what these advisors are going to be doing, it will be premature to talk.
Have you also considered how effective the responsibility of these advisors are to the performance of an administration?
Yes, if you get the right people. Now, the presidency is a very large outfit. The buck stops at the desk of the president. To expect one individual to do all of this will be to suggest that the person becomes ineffective. So as far as I am concerned, yes, the quality of the administration ultimately will lie in identifying proper people to work with you. People who share your ideals, right, and people who know what to do. Because it's not just about believing in the same thing. They must also know what to do. Therefore, I think that it is not out of place to have advisors, but what and who are those advisors will make a lot of difference.
That's what they call the Orosai's reports,
yes,
the white paper that
yes,
brought out a detailed list of some ministries, agencies, and departments that needed to be put together to manage what they call this duplicity of responsibilities. Is it high time to see that report fly in Nigeria?
Well, I believe that there are a lot of, it's not duplicity now, it is multiplicity of functions in government. So I believe, yes, there is need to prune down. Maybe not by way of the Orosai report. I remember I was talking about it some time ago, and I also discovered faults right from the Orosai report, because that report is also to an extent political about, scrap the FCC, scrap the ICPC, or match them, or, there are some, we must agree that in this multiplicity of responsibilities, we must identify our weaknesses and the need for some emergency creations.
Do we really need the FCC and ICPC working as separate agencies, for instance?
Yes, because they have different functions, I believe. And that, to me, represents the kind of emergency that corruption presents to Nigerians.
We had a situation whereby the chairman of the EFCC at the tail end of Jonathan administration came out to say the reason why the EFCC didn't perform, as it was supposed to perform was due to lack of funding, for that agency. That's also another area, because when you have, the more agencies you have, the more money I believe you will require to fund
to run them. Yes, I agree with you. I'm saying that I agree that there's a multiplicity of agencies jostling for the same responsibility. But I'm also saying that there are national emergencies that require some outfit. I give you an example. There's a traffic division of the Nigerian police. Yes, we have Last Mile in Lagos. You will not call Last Mile West. You will not be able to call Last Mile West. because there is an emergency that requires the creation of that outfit. There are some outfits like that. But I'm saying that, yes, we need to prune down, but in pruning down, we must also be circumspect so that we do not, because of the global picture of reducing cost of government, remove some agencies that are children of necessities, such like the EFCC. For example, if you had an effective police, no need for the EFCC, because the police has a unit called the Special Fraud Unit that can deal with these issues. The argument of some certain individuals is that why not empower the SFU instead of creating the EFCC? My answer to that is the hierarchy of the Nigerian police at its one now, the way the personnel were recruited, the way they have been trained, the outlook of the police for now, will it be sufficient to carry out that assignment, at least in the short term?
So we would rather have another agency than overhaul the
for that emergency, we will need an agency in the short term. To address that emergency, you need such an agency in the short term. Ultimately, it will have to go. But we are addressing a national emergency. That is what one of the things I found wanting in the speech of the president, to understand that we are in a critical position in this country, and we are going to take certain critical steps to address this emergency.
But what about the political coloration, in the pursuit of doing their jobs? For instance, the FCC under Nuhu Ribadu, as active as it was at that time, there are other people who would tell you that it was just, a watchdog for the executive at that time. It was a tool in the hand of the executive at that time. Of course, you also saw what happened with the what do they call them now? The agency that went to Bureau Kashamu's house.
NDLEA.
As good as it sounds, there are many people who are also questioning the timing. This was a case as far back as 1994. The NDLEA knew about this even before Bureau Kashamu was elected. So you begin to look at how these agencies have performed, and then the political coloration, in their performance. You begin to wonder how relevant they really are if they are instruments in the hands of the executive.
Well, my view is that Bureau Kashamu should say, I am not wanted in the USA. That's the defense.
They have said that several times.
Oh, but they have shown him an extradition request. I will expect somebody who is harassed by the FCC to say, look, I have not stolen money. It is not a defense to say, you are only going after me because you hate me. The defense really is, I didn't steal money. So I am not one of those people who say, it is a tool in the hands. If I have stolen money, and my friends are in government, and I'm being protected, one day somebody who is not my friend will get there and will go after me. So as far as I'm concerned, it is of no moment that the reason why they are coming after you is because you are not friends with government. The real thing is, if you are clean, why would they come after you anyway?
But should we not also consider the rule of law? For instance, there was a court order that asked them to withdraw. For a while, they resisted that court order. Afterwards, it was clear that it was wrong for them to have laid siege on the residents of that bank, whether guilty or not.
Who said it was wrong?
That was the position of the court.
No! The court didn't say that. The court didn't say that.
The court asked them to withdraw.
Yes.
At some time.
The point is, there are temporary reliefs sometimes granted by the courts. The temporary reliefs are, we call them interim orders. The court says, because you have come to me in an emergency, and because you are alleging that irreparable harm may be done to you if action is not taken immediately. And if I allow the other party to come, that will take time. And in that time, irreparable and irreversible harm may have been done. The court gives what it calls temporary reliefs. They are called interim orders, the last 7 days. That was what happened. The court cannot take a decision on that matter by hearing Bureau Kashamu alone and leaving out NDLEA. So the court cannot come to say that laying siege there or trying to, because what they wanted to do was to arrest him. They have the powers to arrest. What is illegal about that? Nothing.
That's all right. Let's get back to, what brought us here in the first place, the multiplicity of responsibilities and duties on the part of these agencies. What are your expectations really for this incoming administration when you juxtapose it with the urgency with which Nigerians are asking for it?
Well, in addressing this, we have to understand where the loopholes lie. There was a discussion I was having with a governor one day, and I said, sir, you talk about recurrent expenditure. Is it staff salaries, or is it cost of travels, per diem that you give to people who go to unnecessary seminars in places as far as Australia? These are things that government must identify. On the short run, there are so many things you can scrap immediately. A government official on level 16 wants to attend a seminar for junior staff in Australia, and he collects millions for travels, for hotels, for feeding, allowances of all manners of nomenclature. As far as I'm concerned, put a stop to that first. Then, gradually, when you are moving into government, you will see these spots where there are leakages and they can be plugged. But what I suspect they will do, which I do not think will be right, is that they will just use reports like the Orosanye report, scrap certain ministries, sack hapless civil servants who are not really the cause of depletion of funds of government. That is what I suspect they will do. And I think government should avoid that kind of feature, because what you are just going to do is dump helpless people into the labor market and retain the real corporates in government. Because if you look at it from this perspective, president wants to go to a conference of the United Nations or Commonwealth or all these funny meetings they attend without real impacts on the life of Nigerians. And they take a retinue of all manners of aids, special assistant on water, special assistant on food, all manners of people. And they say, yes, our recurrent expenditure is climbing. Those are the things that make it very high. Not the civil servant who stays in the office earning 20, 30,000 naira per month. Those are really not, in my view, the bleeding agents of our economy. They are the bleeding agent really is the ostentatious lifestyle in government, official recklessness, or official profligacy of people in government. That's what I think is causing the bleeding, and that is what I think government should avoid.
Let's take a short break here. When we come back, we'll find out more on the show. Stick around, don't go away.
Every day, every hour, and every minute, news break in Nigeria. Things happen so fast, it's most times difficult to track and comprehend them. But that's what we do right here on Digit 360. 2015, would you want to come back again?
It's like asking Jesus Christ if he knew he was going to die, will you want to come back as the savior of the world again?
We do not just help you track the stories, we break them down, explore all the angles, analyze the issues so that you can fully comprehend the stories and use them to make the right decisions.
As news breaks, people don't let events pass without giving their comment or reactions.
When the problem arises in society, these are the people that you'll be consulting.
To cleanse the corruption in society, we are not to provide information for good life and also security of life and property in this country.
The academic society have the loudest voice on this platform.
Whether you call it a sovereign national conference or a national conference, it's about the people of Nigeria.
There should be a change in power.
In any way they can do it.
I think there's a script already.
Every Tuesday at 8:45 p.m. on this station. From the Ivory Tower, a must-watch for the learning minds.
You can now watch Core TV News live from anywhere in the world on our website www.coretvnews.com. Click on Live TV on our website and watch us live.
And welcome to Core TV Primetime News.
To follow us on Twitter, click on Twitter icon on our website. On Facebook, click on the Facebook and YouTube to see all our previous news production. You can also watch us live on YouTube. Click Core TV, leave a space, then News. Core TV News, a 24-hour news station.
It is often said that the future belongs to those who are inspired to dream. Dreams of a future where we're more than able to move the entire world.
Mom, one day I'm gonna be a superstar performer.
Yes, one day.
Rich and creamy peak, extra fortified with 28 vitamins and minerals. Here's to 60 years of nourishing dreams and inspiring the future. The future is bright. Reach for your peak.
Thanks for joining us again. It's Core Digest Friday, exclusive to Core TV News. Of course, Buhari campaigns promising Nigerians outpour of queries at this time is the focus of our discussion on the show this Friday. Tomi Olagunju, legal practitioner, joins us. Thank you very much for saying the course of the show.
Thank you very much.
How healthy would you call this outpour of queries at this time, less than a week to the Buhari administration?
I would just say it's a product of the very high expectations of Nigerians. It is instructive for government to see it that way and buckle up. What it means is that Nigerians expect government to hit the ground running. That's my view of it. So, well, some of them are born out of the genuine desire for the promised change. Some of them are born out of the cautious optimism of people. Some of them are born out of fanaticism, people who love Buhari so much. And some of them are born out of mischief, people who are hell-bent on showing that, look, this government will not perform, and these are the indicators. That's the way I view it. But I think the best way for the best angle from government to see it is that, look, Nigerians expect a lot from us.
Okay.
Nigerians are, this is perhaps the first time, and I say this with all modesty, where Nigerians can say, we have elected a government. This is perhaps the first time that you saw so much public interest in elections. Now, as a corollary to that, you will find that there is renewed interest in monitoring the activities of government. Or have you ever heard of people trying to look at how much the price of the wristwatch of somebody associated with a public official is? It shows that Nigerians are going to scrutinize this government right to their undergarments. They should be very careful. They should be populist in their outlook, make sound decisions, and carry the people along with those decisions.
There is an ongoing public discourse as regards how inspiring the inauguration speech of Mr. President was. Of course, one of the major decisions that was made was the relocation of the military base from the Federal Capital Territory to Maiduguri, Borno State capital. Many are beginning to question how strategic that decision is at this time, whether it was a right move in the right direction. What are your thoughts along that?
Well, I think he didn't move the military base. He moved the command center. Okay. There's a difference between that. What it means is that the headquarters of the military is still where it is. It is just that you expect generals to be at the war front. You don't say you are a general and you have grown pot bellies and fats behind, and all you do is to talk on phone. We expect generals to be right where the action is and to combat from the front, not to lead from the back. That's exactly what the president has done, and I think that is fine.
And what impact do we expect that to have, really?
What it means is that now the generals are going to be involved in the war. Not just administrative involvement, personal, physical involvement in the war against terrorism.
We seem to have had some level of reawakening on the part of the insurgency in the last couple of days. We've seen some re-emergence of a couple of suicide bombings, you know, relative to how it was, especially 6 weeks before the rescheduled election. many are asking and questioning what should there be a continuity in the approach that the Jonathan-led administration brought in, with the, what do they call it now, the regional force seem to have calmed down the effect on the people for a while. Do you expect a continuum or a continuity in the strategy employed by the outgoing administration?
Well, I don't think the joint operation of the regional force of Nigeria and its neighbors, I don't think it has stopped. Just yesterday, a Nigerian was, announced as somebody to head the force with his office in Chad or so, or in Niger. So I don't think that has stopped. What I think has happened is that Boko Haram has reversed back to its original strategy. They started with suicide bombings and things like that. And when they saw that the Nigerian military did not respond adequately, they went open, started taking territories and things like that. But right now, I think they have been sufficiently weakened so that they cannot come all out to fight open wars, to say we want to capture Maiduguri, we are taking over Bama, we are doing this, we are doing that, we are erecting our flag in parts of Nigeria. I think they have retreated from that strategy, and they are coming back to the solo guerrilla type terrorism of suicide bombings. Ultimately, I think if the war and the onslaught against Boko Haram is sustained, it will be history in a matter of very little time.
It's all right. Let's also move to other matters. There are unconfirmed reports, mostly on the social media, that the president has plans to nominate himself as the Minister of Petroleum Resources. We know how the fact that he has some experience in that department while he was, some decades back. But how realistic is that? We recall at some point the Lagos State Governor doubled as the Minister of Works in Lagos. But is it also? I'm talking about Commission of Works in Lagos. Is it realistic on the national platform to have the president doubled as a minister of another sector?
I do not think that's the way to look at it. The first thing to note is that all ministers hold their offices at the pleasure of the president. All ministers are appointed to perform the duty of the president. So when you see somebody as Minister for Works, is acting for the president in the area of works. So it is the prerogative of the president to say, I appoint you as minister to oversee this aspect of my own job.
Okay.
So to me, the president does not need to nominate himself as the Minister of Works. All he has to do is to structure his administration such that the agencies in the oil sector report directly to him or in a manner that is dictated by him. So what he will simply do is to refuse to nominate a Minister for Petroleum Affairs. And then the agencies that were under the Ministry of Petroleum or whatever reports as dictated by him. I do not think there's anything wrong with that, especially considering the fact that the oil sector in recent times has been marred with a lot of controversy as to management of funds, as to profligacy of the individuals heading that ministry. It is in this same country that we had a managing director of NNPC who was said to have who was said to have accumulated hotel expenses in hundreds of millions. And when he was asked, he said he was doing us a favor. In this same country. It is in this same country that we have seen ministers of petroleum alleged to have accumulated travel bills for chartering private jets up to in the tune of billions of naira. So if the president feels sufficiently concerned to want to see into it or restructure it up to a point where he feels confident to hand it over to anybody as minister, such that he wants to manage it by himself, it is his job. Because like I said earlier, all ministers are doing the job of the president as delegated to them by the president. It's the president who says, I appoint Nifemi as Minister of Court TV to oversee it for me if Court TV was a part of government or a ministry of government. So it is the prerogative of government to decide, of the president to decide ministries and their structures and the functions which they perform and the individuals who will head them as ministers. So really, the president does not have to nominate himself as Minister of Petroleum Resources. All he has to do is to keep the agencies that were under that ministry in line, in the reportorial line that he will dictate.
But in your informed opinion, what is your expectation in this light? Nigeria being Africa's largest oil producing nation, and the reality on ground, food scarcity, high prices and all of that. What is that thing that needs to be done? There are many people who are saying, well, we might not get it all with this administration. He might just build the foundation. But what, especially for the oil and gas sector, the local refineries, what's your expectation of this administration? What's expected of them really at this time?
Well, there have been a lot of discussions about that. I am not an economist, but I believe you don't have to be an economist to know that if you produce the raw materials, why will you need to ship crude out of Nigeria and bring it so that it can be refined for you, and then you bring it back when you have refineries here? Or even if you don't have, when you can build. It is wrong most of the time, and I tell people to say, oil sells for this price in the UK. They don't have oil. We have. So it is wrong for individuals in government to insist that we be like every other person when it comes to, pricing of petroleum products. As far as I am concerned, I think it's imperative that the government makes the local refineries work. We have seen that dependence on oil marketers or whatever, we can have problems. For example, I even thought of a situation. I am not a political scientist. I said, what if there's a war? What if we have conflicts with people who refine this oil for us? Is Nigeria just going to be crippled? Because, for example, the oil marketers brought Nigeria practically to his knees 2 weeks ago by refusing to lift oil when there is crude in Nigeria. Apapa is perpetually blocked because that's where the tank farms are. That's where we bring fuel in. Why do we have to go through that kind of hassle? Because for things we produce here. To me, it looks like our normal situation where Nigeria produces timber and we import furniture. Things as little as ruler, toothpick, made from bamboo that we can find behind your studio here are the things we import. So to me, there is a need for a holistic approach to these things. And I believe that making our refineries work will be critical to addressing the problem of distribution of petroleum products in Nigeria.
We witnessed some dramatic positive bills towards the end of the 7th National Assembly. The Senate passed about 46 bills in 10 minutes, and amazingly, the House of Reps also eventually passed the PI bill. What's the implication of that? Because there was much talk as regards, that bill has to be passed, and that is what the oil and gas sector really needs to be revived. Is it Uhuru now, after the position taken by the House of Reps?
I will tell you straight, no. First, the passage of 46 bills in 10 minutes is a mockery of lawmaking. I think they should be ashamed of themselves for doing that. But apart from that, when you talk about the PIB, in Nigeria, we heighten hopes over very little things. The PIB has been described as, there's a drug in Yoruba, they call it Gbogbo Nishe. One drug cures everything. That the problem with the Nigerian oil industry is the PIB. One, nobody really knows the contents of the PIB, as it were. We have seen several versions. So which of them was eventually passed? I am not an oil and gas practitioner per se, but I've done some work on the tax portion of the PIB. And the conclusion we came to at the end of the day was that it didn't really address all the issues that have been problematic between the Nigerian government and the major producers of oil in Nigeria. The IOCs there's this case we call Mobile and FIRS where there were issues, and that the tax payments of oil industries at some point was based on the memorandum of agreement between government and this IOC, not on the Petroleum Profit Tax Act. These were issues that the PIB still fails to address. So as far as I'm concerned, yes, it may represent an improvement in the conduct of oil business, but to say, yes, it is all that we need to turn our oil business into the kind of sector we will expect, I think no.
But let's also look at the implementation of these bills, because it's one thing to pass a bill, it's another thing to have it implemented. And we saw that when the Senate leader talked about a total of 591 bills that were considered between 2011 and 2015. He also insisted that 150 motions were treated and resolutions made, but the executive failed to comply with most of them. Maybe we should bring the judiciary in here. How does it really work? The legislature is supposed to make the law, right? And then we have the executive implement it. But that's not been the case most of the times in this part of the world. Why is it so?
Well, I think we must differentiate between what the Senate leader is saying and the reality. Resolutions are not laws.
Okay.
Although resolutions of the assembly should be respected by the executive, but that does not make that resolution law. If you have a law, that law must be respected. Anybody who flouts the law should be brought to book. In fact, most laws have punitive clauses prescribing punishment for its violation.
Okay.
I give an example. The NDLEA Act or says you, or Narcotics Act or whatever, we catch you with marijuana, this is the punishment. So it's not a question of pleading for you to obey the law. The law envisages a situation where people will flout the law and they will get punished. I come to the judiciary. There are so many problems also bedeviling the judiciary. So many. One, the fact that it is not sufficiently manned. I've seen a court that says I have a docket of 700 cases. One judge, 700 cases. There is no way that kind of judge can perform. If you know the volume of things that lawyers put before judges at some point, you will marvel. Two, our jurisprudence is also pedantic at some point. We have sometimes rights of appeal from customary court to the Supreme Court. What it means is that if I have a minor quarrel with you, we can drag it for 20 years. The subject matter will have been destroyed, evidence will have been destroyed before we even come to the substance of it, because I can challenge the tendering of a document from magistrate court up to Supreme Court without addressing the meat of the matter. So yes, I agree that these problems are interwoven, they are multi-level, but really that is not the biggest problem. The biggest problem is the will to implement. And you can see this from the body language of the leader. I tell you, once the leadership buckles up and straightens itself, people will fall in line. Like I told you, or like we agreed earlier, you were the one that said it first, there's a need to make examples. Somebody goes outside the line, you whip him back in line, immediately and publicly. He sends the message. So if you pass 1 million bills without the will to, implement those laws, you just have wasted your time.
Let's look at, please go ahead.
There's this feeling that I get when I talk to people about the insufficiency of our laws. I agree that our laws are not in the best state, but they are not so inefficient such that we should be in this kind of position. For instance, somebody is taken to court by the EFCC. He spends years and years in the case, and they say it's because of our law. I don't agree. There is no law that permits people to steal in Nigeria. There is no such law. When you see serious judges who are interested in dealing with criminals or in doing justice between the people and the accused persons who trouble the society, you will see the clear difference. I tell you, most of our criminal laws were borrowed from the UK. James Ibori was charged in Nigeria. He was acquitted in one fell swoop without going into the merit of the allegations. He went across the shores, and when he came before a serious judge, the same offenses have landed him in jail. So as far as I'm concerned, our laws, as outdated as they look, are not as ineffective as we make them to seem.
How do we make that work? Because are we looking at, I understand there was a national conference where they attempted to edit and re-edit the constitution. There's also an ongoing constitutional review by the National Assembly. But when it comes to the laws where the judiciary chairs, what do you expect to be done in that regards? Because on one hand is the effectiveness of the law themselves. On the other hand is the justice and the timeliness of justice, which you made mention earlier. What are your expectations from this administration?
Like I said, yes, there's need for review. In fact, there's need for continuous review. There's a law reform commission in Nigeria and in most countries. What this means is that law must be dynamic. You keep reviewing your laws to accord with present realities. However, no matter how intelligently drafted your laws are, no matter how much they accord with your realities, there must be the will to implement them. That will comes from the leader. Once the leader, I give you an example. If the managing director of this outfit says resumption time is 8 o'clock, and it gets here 7:45, it may be difficult for the cleaner to get here at 1 minute past 8. That is what we need in Nigeria. Seriousness on the part of the people who lead. And when they are serious, if they are supposed to appoint judges, they will look at the people who are qualified and appoint the best amongst them. When they are when those who are appointed see the position of the leaders, they will not become laissez-faire in the way they interpret the laws. They will not get to court and they will say the judge is not around because of one flimsy excuse or something. He will attend to his duties. And when we see people go outside their responsibilities properly, we hammer. It does a lot on the psyche of the common person. I'll give you an example. Why do we see people steal so much? Why? Because at the end of the day, nothing. They know that really nothing will happen. I give you an example. If you travel through Nigerian airports, you see Nigerians try to jump the queue. They do all sorts of things. The same people, when they land outside the shores of this country, they stay in line. You know why? Because they know that where you are, the police will smile gently before they take you to prison for flouting what you consider to be simple laws. Once that is implemented in Nigeria, we will begin our journey to normalcy.
And you're saying this is a top to bottom, there has to be a top to bottom approach. For instance,
that is the best way to do it.
The judiciary challenge now, can there be a Buhari solution to it? I'm looking at how it trickles down, given the hydra-headed challenges that is facing at this time. I'm just trying to be in his shoes and wondering what his responsibility is right now for that arm of government.
He's going to be suggesting names to be appointed as judges, judges of the Court of Appeal, Federal High Court judges of the Supreme Court. He will be responsible for suggesting the name of the person who becomes the next Chief Justice of Nigeria, if there is that vacancy before he leaves office. If he researches very well and he has the understanding with people who are to man this thing, we can see improvements. I give instances. If you are trying to analyze a judge in America, for instance, the first thing is who appointed him. Is he a Republican appointed judge or a Democratic appointed judge? Once you know the person that appointed him, you can predict how he will decide. By implication, Buhari should appoint people who have his view.
I see.
That is the way it is done all over the world. For instance, you go before, there is a matter before the Supreme Court of America about gay rights. You can almost be sure how the decision will go even before you argue. Because you know that this person was appointed by so person is likely to decide this way. That to me is what I expect of the present government.
Before I let you go, let's touch on the expectation as regards the relationship between the executive and the legislature, especially with the incoming 8th National Assembly now. The tide seems to have changed. The leadership of the House would be with a party from which the presidency has been elected. What do we expect to see? Because There are people who have the opinion that the majority, once the presidency shares the same party with the majority at the National Assembly, they eventually become a rubber stamp of the presidency. You also recall that what we saw at the House of Reps, the moment the numbers changed, we started seeing some questions. We started seeing the House of Reps, asking the executive. It wasn't business as usual. But what do we expect to see at this time?
Well, I must say that since the beginning of the Fourth Republic, the ruling party has always had the majority in the House. There was no time that even in the last government, although their preferred person...
The numbers changed.
May not have been
at the time we had
House.
the Speaker of the House coming from
yes,
the APC.
from a minority, because he was not in the majority in the House, although he had support of most of the members. My view is that one of the tricky issues for which I think Buhari will face will be his relationship with the National Assembly. Ask me why. The National Assembly in recent times has become a cash cow for the members. Now, for a government trying to cut costs, those are one of the areas you should go into to prune down the way, to prune down their profligacy, if I must put it that way. It is no longer the time for members of the National Assembly to be ostentatious in their living. I just learned that they will go away with the choice cars Nigerians bought for them. It's okay, but I think that would be a banana peel for the president. The relationship with the National Assembly, because he will really have to put his feet down. Constituency allowances, to me, that is clear avenue for stealing. What is the meaning of that? But constituency projects.
In cutting down those costs, would he also need the validation of the National Assembly?
No, he does not. He does not. What do you need the validation of the National Assembly for? That is, constituency projects is not a point of law. It's not a question of law. It's not that there's a law that says reps members or Senate members must collect money from the national purse and go and execute contracts. They are not contractors, they are lawmakers. So they should restrict their duties to lawmaking. Once they do, and I think the president should insist on that. Although I see that having the backlash of lack of cooperation with him in other areas. But I think those are part of the things the president must do. To tell members of the National Assembly, and governors should follow suit, that look, we cannot have you becoming contractors. Face legislative duties. If you face legislative duties, then you will be able to pass your laws in good times. You'll be able to do committee functions in good time, such that you will not need to pass 46 bills in 10 minutes on the last day of office.
It's all right. Let's look at your definition of constructive criticisms, especially now that some are saying, the APC, for instance, is saying, there's no excuse though, but you should understand that we can't make these changes happen overnight. On the other side, we have the electorate who is saying, we fought to bring you here. It's the first time it's happened in the history of Nigeria, and we actually can't wait to see the changes. How do we bridge this gap?
I think the bridge in the gap is the posturing of government. That is the first bridge. Government should position itself in a way such that people see the seriousness in their quests for change. That gives the comfort to the common man who waited perhaps till 12 midnight on 28th of March to vote. That gives him the confidence that, look, these problems are being addressed. That way he can wait to see the results. But when you start with the wrong step, for instance, like appointing two media aides, two senior media personalities in Nigeria as your media aides, it brings back the memory of what he was complaining about in the first place that made him vote for you. That to me would be a wrong step. But if government positions itself in a way such that the common man has the hope that something will happen, then the criticisms will wither out in a matter of time.
Thank you very much for finding time to join us today on Core Digest. I've been speaking with Tommy Olagaju, a legal practitioner who joined us for the first time on the show. We hope to have you come subsequently.
To be my pleasure. Thank you.
All right, that wraps it on the show today. Thank you for watching. I am Nifemi. We're going to be back tomorrow, but this time around it's going to be Core Digest special, where we break the limits and bring you feeds from entertainment, the economic, and also several other sectors. It's more like a robust show, and that's the extra that we're bringing to you. Thank you for being there. We'll be back next week with another edition of Core Digest. I wish you join us.
Nigerians are expected to seek out the best. 2 words to describe the activity. The Yoruba Unity Forum is conducted.
Be the first to know. Core TV News. From the north, south, east, west, and around Africa. Presidential ambition. We break the news.
Women in Nigeria.
Now you can catch all the actions live.
I wish you were
as the news breaks. We are Core TV News.
Welcome to Core TV Primetime
News. A 24-hour news station.